It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a spectacle. From San Francisco to Long Island. 'Cause nothing's better than a motion video.
It's Movie Time is produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando,
And I'm Mindy Mcfann.
and this is It's Movie Time.
Sure is.
Cabrini, how have I heard that name before?
My only reference was the Cabrini Green, that awful public housing project in Chicago. And I hate the fact that her name was on it.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only place I'd heard the name.
I thought that there were still, when I was growing up, there's still Cabrini hospitals.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
That I don't know. I only know the Cabrini Green.
Anyway, we have a film.
Yes.
This is one of the first really good films of 24. And it's called Cabrini,
Yeah.
after Mother Cabrini.
Now, given your background, did you know who she was?
I knew the name.
Okay.
And I knew that it was Catholic.
Right.
And I may even have known that she was a saint.
Mm-hmm.
But the story that this biopic tells us, I did not know.
That's the sin. That's the sin that nobody knew about this woman. I never heard of her. That's the sin there.
Well, she was so self-effacing and so just concerned with her mission to help kids.
She was a power.
That marketing was not in her wheelhouse. And I knew that she was canonized. I think I knew that.
Right.
And she was, in fact, the first American saint, or at least the first female.
First American.
First American.
Yes.
Well, think about that.
That's
being canonized.
Yeah. So deserved.
What's the conflict here? Mindy, a really good film like this will have a conflict.
Well, the conflict is men not listening when they should. That's the conflict for me.
I knew you'd.
I mean, this woman had power, she had strength, she had motivation and a heart of gold, and she had to fight every single man that got in her way.
Boy, and there were some toughies.
Yes.
I mean, what I like about this film, and Alejandro Monteverde was also the director of Sound of Freedom.
Okay.
And now, have you heard about that? That came out last year, independently produced. Christian idea,
okay.
But human trafficking in South America.
Oh, yes.
And big box office smash hit. And these are the same people, Angel Studios.
Right.
And I'll be darned, Mindy, if they don't produce a good film.
Yes, but this is not. I would not call this a religious film.
No.
That is the fact that takes place within the Catholic Church is an aside almost to me. Now, I'm not Catholic, but that's the way. They don't talk about the religious aspect. They talk about the power struggle aspect.
I remember taking my son to that Sound of Freedom last summer, and he's from South America. And he was moved by it to the extent that someday he wants to join the movement against human trafficking. And it is the same thing that you're talking about. You expect to be beaten over the head, but you're not.
No.
They kind of just present it to you, and you can't help but be moved when you see these kids, barely teens, being trafficked.
Yes.
And so then we take Cabrini, and you say, I became now a supporter of Angel Studios. When I can see somebody who takes potentially a very heavy religious theme,
yes,
and presents a film that's realistic.
Well, and it's about a woman.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it is about a woman.
Yeah.
That's what the movie's about.
Yes, it is. And she makes that point, doesn't she, in several places. I love that.
Yeah.
Right to their faces.
Yeah.
Is this because I'm a woman?
Yes.
We're talking, 1889, 18...
Yeah, the turn of the century, I'm guessing about.
Turn of the century.
Yeah. And you forget that 5 minutes ago women were irrelevant.
Wow.
It's easy to forget how my grandmother lived.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I was just listening to something else about how, during the Gilded area, how women couldn't go out to eat alone. Or not alone, with other women.
Yes, right.
Couldn't even go out to eat.
Yes.
My mother couldn't get a credit card. I mean, these are very short time ago things.
Yeah, yeah.
But she just kept going.
What's also interesting is that this is in New York at that turn of that century.
Yeah, starts in Italy and then goes to New York.
Yeah, and so she's assigned by the Pope to the slums of New York City.
Mhm.
She really wanted to do it somewhere in the East.
Right.
And he said no.
Yeah.
Giancarlo Giannini. I
Yeah.
don't know if you ever remember him as
Mhm. Yep, absolutely.
Wasn't he great as
Yes.
the Pope?
He was wonderful. He was wonderful.
So he sends her to New York City,
Yeah.
and she goes obedient. That's one of the things that this would remind me how the church so demands obedience.
Mhm.
And you wanted to say, well, don't listen to them. Well, she had to.
It was kind of pseudo obedience, if you ask me, but.
Oh, okay, from her.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, it was obedience, but she always had but.
This was both the Monsignor in New
Mhm.
York,
Mhm.
played very imperiously by David Morse.
Yeah, I thought he was great.
He was-
Because he starts out, you really want to punch him in the face, and his goodness comes through.
Yeah,
Because you always have to remember, I mean, these men were growing up in a world that was socializing them to be who they were,
yes,
and that was not to listen.
yes.
That's just, you don't matter, I do, is how they grew up. So you see him thankfully evolve into going back to, I hope, was his religious beliefs and supporting her.
Yeah, and he does it not reluctantly, but quietly, and he doesn't make a big deal out of it, but we do see him as a character change somewhat. But again, it's what I like the Angel Studios does.
Mhm.
It's not full-blown.
Right.
It's just, I think you were suggesting, a very slight change in him. Suddenly we begin to see behind him, because he starts out and, you're going to obey me.
Right.
And then we get to the mayor,
Mm-hmm.
played by John Lithgow.
Mhm.
How good is he?
He's wonderful at being evil.
He is. And,
But of the time.
yeah.
Of the time.
And the argument is really interesting to me too as well, that they want New York City to have a kind of highbrow feel to it.
Yeah, they want to get rid of the immigrants. They're gross. I mean, they make no, and there is no subterfuge about it.
No.
We do not want these brown, gross little kids who they are clean and beautifully dressed and polite and wonderful children
Yes,
because she has taken them in. We just don't want to see them.
Yeah, yeah. And she is, well, let me ask you this. Did you notice that it really wasn't CGI driven?
Yes, yes. But I thought it had a very 1940s feel, movie-wise, in its, and I don't say this in a pejorative way, in its simplicity.
Good. All right.
I mean, it was a simple movie. This was not a documentary where things were getting gritty.
Yes.
This was just a message about a woman's life.
Yes.
And I think the simplicity of it maybe is something we need nowadays because
Okay.
we're not getting the complicated stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to behave better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the way Monteverde shows it is a sense of realism in a minimalist way. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I was really struck by how authentic it felt, and yet at the same time it was movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was very cinematic to me.
Right,
I mean,
yes.
like when they go, she can't find the children when she's at 5 Points in New York, which still terrifies me from that Martin Scorsese
Yes.
movie. And so they're in this horrible ghetto, immigrant ghetto, and she can't find the children for her orphanage. She asks a prostitute shows them that they're living in the sewer. Now, that was a cinematic version, I presume, of what living in a sewer looks like.
Yes. Right.
I mean, that, I cannot imagine, I mean, when they write the article, that the kids are lower than rats, basically, the way they're treated, but I can't grasp what it'd be like for a child to live in a sewer. I cannot grasp that.
I mentioned that it probably didn't have marketing on her mind, but I love the way they picked up on the phrase that even the rats have it better.
Yeah.
And then when she got the New York Times to buy into the story, I think maybe even the headline was even the rats have it better.
Yeah,
So,
it was.
So she knew But
Yes.
they have one shot with the little mice and rats when they're coming into the place they're first gonna live.
Right.
Whoa, ouch.
Yeah, I bet you there was a lot more rats running around
Oh,
there.
it was.
I mean, can you imagine what 5 Points was like back then?
They still call it 5 Points?
I had no
No,
idea.
I've never heard.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I've not
I
heard
just,
that before.
there's not Ghetto Museum, I can't remember, the museum, what they used to call, I can't think of the word, Tenement Museum in
Yes,
New York.
oh.
And the one thing that will always stick with me is these men came in, when the first book came out about exposing all that, they came in to photograph the people living in the tenements. And they had flashes back then. They couldn't get them to light because there wasn't enough oxygen in the room. And I will never forget that.
Great point, great point.
I mean,
Mindy Mcfann, fortunate for our listeners, they are able to go to our podcast.
yes.
Back Talk. You
Yes.
have to go to WCBE, the podcast experience, Back Talk. If you want to hear more about what Mindy has to say about Cabrini, what do you advise our audience about Cabrini?
Oh, go and take your daughter and your son, please.
It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From